I was first invited to Matsqui Institution in the Fraser Valley, British Columbia in 1996, when I was 22 years old. Some of the men I was to visit had been in prison longer than I'd been alive. I had never been in a penitentiary before. I'd never really thought about it. All I knew was that I was on my way to meet a group of men serving life sentences for murder. The Matsqui Lifers group met every Friday night. I had been invited there as a filmmaker because these men wanted to tell their stories to benefit youth.
The youth will see exactly what they're headed for, where they're going.
You have a good apple, you throw it in a rotten barrel. What's going to happen to the apple? It's going to eventually go rotten itself.
I agreed to meet with them because I was curious about what it would be like inside a federal institution. And I believed in the importance of what they wanted to do.
Because I know that if you bring kids into environments after this similitude, they're going to learn what we refer to at our level of development as the con code.
I first went to jail when I was 16.
Let the law take care of them, and when they come out, whatever happens.
At that time, I didn't question their stories or their intentions. I wasn't worried about allowing them to be experts about youth violence. I was intrigued, and I committed to the project.
Bring the reality. You know, everybody in here at one point or another, when the lights go out, you miss mom. I don't care how old you are, you say, I wish, you know, I could give my mother a hug. Yeah, I wish I was home. I wish I was home, you know.
As I heard this, I remember thinking, that's it. That's what this film is about. But it wasn't.
I took it into my own mind that I was going to die on the inside. If they would have had a death penalty, I would have signed on the dotted line right away just to end the shit. The day I walked into population, I was 26, farm boy. Quite a bit of shit went down. I was standing at my cell door talking to an inmate across the hall from me when somebody down the end of the tier come running down the tier, holding his guts in. He was opened up from side to side. He was doing a piss poor job at holding his guts in. Everything was seeping out in between his fingers and whatnot. He got to the barrier, which is always locked, and was yelling and screaming at the tower to crack it so he can get down to the hospital. The yelling and screaming to the tower didn't do any good, but it was within a couple of minutes he was dead. My first night inside population, and I was thinking to myself, 10 years of this? What the hell have I done? Drugs, pills, hash, the alcohol started around when I was 14. It's a wild concept. 14.
On September 1st, 1988, while under the influence of drugs and alcohol, Kevin and his co-accused went to the home of David Spriggs, a pastor who they believed to be a child molester. They gagged and beat him. He died of asphyxiation.
I'm working up in the 10 years now. I was sitting inside a max when I had my day parole rolled around at the 7-year mark and was shot down because I was still in a max. Since then, I've cascaded down into, well, from one max to another max where it was not quite as violent. And I was able to let my guard down. Yet I still had blades and whatnot, pipes here and there. In case anything did happen, I was prepared. So this year, I'll be putting in for a transfer, day parole, and ETAs. So hopefully I'll get 1 or 2 out of it. There's going to be quite a few people who are going to be reading the paper or watching the news and seeing that another killer has made it to the street, and they're in fear. It's when that gate opens and I walk out and I don't have no handcuffs on me, no waist bracelet, no shackles, no chains. That scares me. I'm not used to that. It's hard to imagine life outside after the amount of years on the inside.
I learned that in Canada, lifers do, in most cases, get out of prison. Kevin's life 10 sentence means that he has to serve a minimum of 10 years before being eligible for full parole. When I first interviewed Meva Gill, he was 21 years into his life 25 sentence.
I wasn't thinking. I was just acting out. There was no time for thinking. Maybe there was time for thinking. I just didn't think. I didn't know how to think. That's what it comes down to. My father and my uncle had fallen apart. There was a family feud going on. If I killed him, he said, I'm going to go to jail. And if you do it, he said, I'll get you a lawyer. This gave me an opportunity to show and prove my love to him. I said, okay. I said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I went and killed my uncle for my father. His wife came along, my aunt.
Even now, I'm still kind of in the dark about what the exact details were. I didn't really know that they'd done it until I think probably I was probably 17 or 18. And up until then, I used to think they were framed or something like that. That's what I used to say. I go, yeah, they were framed. Didn't really know until later on.
My father was originally charged with 2 conspiracy to commit murder and 2 counts murder because he, well, what was that word? He encouraged me into killing. At his appeal, he got it. He was offered a deal for manslaughter, and he pled guilty to manslaughter. He got 9 years.
We lost a lot of dignity. We used to be a pretty well-respected family in the community, and everything went. I'm doing life 25. Had 2 murders on the street. One was life 10 and one was life 25. I've been in for 21 years solid. I have no real actual memory of my 20s, except 1, 2, or 3 incidents that happened that I remember. The rest of them is just one day into the next, so I really have no memory of that. My world was my immediate environment. I learned how to read and write in prison, and mind is like any muscle. You work it, you get better at it, you get good at it. I wasn't using my mind, but I wasn't used to thinking and making reasonable decisions. And I just went from day to day, and that was it. No plans. And now, since I come into prison, I started going to school, and I started thinking for myself as opposed to, following people like sheep. I think I missed out a lot, not having a dad there or a brother. Because you see other families that they're able to achieve a lot more together.
The closer I'm getting, the more resentments that I'm getting, I'm feeling towards my father. Feelings of abandonment, He came in here and he left me behind, and I'm having a difficult time dealing with that.
Clear the yard. Clear the yard.
In 1979, Meva was given yet another life sentence for killing an inmate who he claimed had been making repeated sexual advances towards him. He was 24 years old, the same age I was at the time. But he'd already been responsible for taking the lives of 3 people. I began to ask, why are there so many young men in our prisons?
5 minutes to count. 5 minutes to count.
Build them and they will come. I mean, build more jails and they will be filled. The children who are likely to have problems are known from a very early age. But we don't intervene at that point. They actually have to get into trouble and do something before we start really intervening. It's very difficult. There just aren't the resources available. So it's pay now, pay later. If you pay later, it's really expensive and it keeps us employed, and that's nice, but it's probably not the best use of public dollars. I guess there's this simplistic view of life that, you know, if I thought I was going to get punished and there was a certainty I was going to get punished like that, I wouldn't do it. That works well for those of us that are not criminally oriented or have other thinking deficits, that have gone through normal education programs from normally family upbringings and have learned to think properly and everything else.
Could it be this black and white? I was getting farther away from the original intention of the film, and I was beginning to question whether these men were innately evil, or whether they were just products of the environments they grew up in. Then, I met Ryan Love. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what your family was like when you were growing up?
Well, my family was the best. Still have yet to find, talking with people and hearing about their parents, a better family. You know, either one of them or the other one or both of them have certain problems, and it's almost shocking how perfect my family is. I mean, they never denied me with anything without, just cause. And if I deserved it, I could have it, and if I asked for it, but it never seemed to be enough for me, of course.
At approximately 2 o'clock this morning, we found a body of a 24-year-old female near the elementary school here in Banff. Subsequent investigation has revealed that the suspect stole the taxi cab that the victim was driving and left the scene and abandoned it and fled the scene on foot.
For weeks, they were banging on my door. Every time the knock on the door was, it's the cops. Somebody saw something. Somebody's, they're coming to get me.
We're looking for a male that's 5'8" to 10 inches, 170 to 180 pounds, shoulder-length hair, clean cut, wearing jeans, and a dark sweater or jacket.
We've had approximately 600 tips from across Canada, North America, and even in France. And of these tips, we've done quite a bit of investigating and eliminated 500 suspects.
Ryan fled Banff for his parents' home on Vancouver Island, where he hid out for 2 years. His family was completely unaware of his crime.
They showed up New Year's Eve, and that was the first we knew about it. And they had actually contacted Ryan, and Ryan had gone down to the police station and identified the knife as his.
And then, of course, then the roof caved in.
Yeah.
Ryan Love was eventually arrested on November 12, 1992.
They finally caught up with me. And I still hadn't changed my life, even after that.
One of the things that happened after Ryan was arrested was, one of the reasons people couldn't believe it was because a lot of people looked at our family as the ideal family. We spent lots of time together. I stayed home when the kids were little, before they went to school, and we really focused on our family. If I look at the times that Ryan was growing up and Melody was growing up, I kind of accepted things at face value. I didn't look too much beyond them because there wasn't any reason to. There are families like ours that are average, everyday families that have a belief that life is going to look a certain way, and that things like murder don't ever touch your family. That has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with us. And that's what really happened to us, is that even through that investigation, we were in total denial.
Even when I was arrested, and right away the lawyer said, keep your mouth shut. Well, you know, he's getting paid a lot of money for this, so he must know what he's talking about. The evidence was illegally gained, and that you're going to win, you're going to be acquitted. And sounds great. You mean I can be home in time for Christmas kind of thing?
We wanted to believe he didn't do it, and because of that, when the lawyer said, you know, we're going to get you off and it's a technicality and the police have violated your rights, we wanted to believe that, and it fit in with our view that he didn't do it anyway, so yeah.
The criminal justice system, the legal system, isn't there to support that happening, Ryan gaining responsibility or anything. It's not there to help us understand what happened. The criminal justice system is there to defend rights. Ryan's rights didn't need to be defended. I mean, Lucy Turmel's rights needed to be defended.
It's a happy day. We are satisfied, but it's very hard too, because somebody had killed our daughter, and it's hard. We are satisfied, but it's very hard.
As I looked at them and could almost feel their pain, we wanted to go over, but we didn't, because we didn't know what to say. What could we say? You know, we're sorry, but we just felt terrible that we were confronted. Well, we were right in the same room with them, but we had no conversation at all. So
And we sat down with Ryan when he got to the place of accepting responsibility for what he had done. And one of the things we said to him is, put yourself in Lucy Turmel's brother's place and say to yourself, how would I feel if someone murdered Melody?
My brother was unable to see the consequence. He never thought ahead to say, if I get caught or if this happens, you know. So I think it's a personal thing where he wasn't able to set that limit himself, like that, his own boundary.
We've learned over 6 years to live our life, and our family is now shaped to include a prison. But what's going to happen when he comes out? Like, I think that's something people don't understand about lifers. In Canada, lifers come out of prison. I mean, there are exceptions, and multiple murderers, and you know, we won't see Clifford Olson or Paul Bernardo on the street, but you're going to see Ryan on the street. You're going to see Ryan on the street, and I think that's another piece that we're going to have to find a way to live with.
No, why not? A little chicken. There were some people who would say I got off lightly, and I didn't get enough time, and I should spend the rest of my life in prison. And there's the other group that says I was dealt too harshly with, and that the first-time offense I should have been given a less of a sentence. But you know, I can't really comment, because you know, what price do you put on a life, really? You know, you know, is justice served? What is the price? What do you ring up on the cash register, kind of thing? You know, should it be the eye for the eye? You know, is there any point in that?
I think we acknowledge that everybody has lost something. Everybody who's been touched by this has lost something. But we have tried never to lose sight of the fact that who's the victim here. Ryan's not the victim. We're not the victims. The victim died, and the victim is the family that is living without their daughter.
This made the world a little more frightening for me. Ryan's crime was disturbing. His victim had been the same age I was when I interviewed him. I was looking to make sense of it all. Donna Bannister had been working with these men for 13 years through the John Howard Society. She seemed to provide the nurture of a mother and I wasn't sure how she did it or why.
Generally speaking, we simply are there to take part in their meetings. Sometimes it's really difficult to be non-judgmental.
I believe that we have stripped parents of their responsibility, and instead of them being the main caregivers, they're actually a supplement.
I'm a parent. It becomes really, really easy to blame delinquency with kids on parental negligence when, I mean, this is a whole new society than, quite different than it was when you were a kid or when I was a kid. People see them as individuals who have committed heinous offenses, and you know, if you're capable of going there once, you're capable of going there again. But the reality is that their recidivism rate is less than 0.5%. Very often, lifers are not of a criminal lifestyle. Certainly, the longer an individual is maintained inside an institution, the more institutionalized they become, the more difficult it is to bring them back out and reintegrate them and have them go safely forward. The system, unfortunately, is not set up to look at individual needs. There are too many people and too few dollars. Most individuals are looked at in terms of an event, of an offense. You become an event. Your life is eventualized.
I realized that Donna needed me to believe in these men the way that she did, and I wanted to. For me, there seemed to be those who had accepted and taken responsibility for what they'd done, and those who claimed they were innocent and made excuses for their crimes. I wanted to believe in the ability for a person to change. I still do. What would you say to yourself if you saw yourself 15, 20 years ago?
If I were to go back and be with myself 15 or 20 years ago, I would just put my arms around me. I would hug me. I would spend time with me. I would communicate that Bayfield, you're a valuable person. You're young. Things look bleak. You don't know where you're going, but you are a valued person, and I really love you. I'm in prison for second-degree murder, and I've been sentenced to life with our parole eligibility at 10 years.
And how long have you been in on that sentence?
I begin my 15th year in February.
On a 10-year sentence?
On a 10-year sentence, yes. I was living on unemployment. I was broke, and I was looking for an easy way to get money. And I decided to rob a man at knife point, something which I'd never done before. And when I did, this man was fighting back, and I panicked in the situation, and I stabbed him, and he died. I stabbed him multiple times, and he died on the way to the hospital. In the first 5 or 6 years, it's totally unreal. There's no concept of doing life. So it's kind of like day by day, and it was actually a pretty good experience for me. But now I've settled in, like over the last 9 or 10 years, to recognizing that I have been sentenced to life, and I could be here for the rest of my natural life, and I accept that. There's 3 things that I see that I have that I didn't have before I committed the crime, and that's a sense of purpose and direction and meaning in my life. Actually having values. My theory is that the Lord has a great plan for me, and this is like a seasoning time, a time of preparation to become mature.
Chapter 3. For this reason, I, Paul, the prisoner of Christ Jesus, for the sake of you Gentiles.
Actually, the idea of becoming a preacher is what spurred me on to make the decision to believe in the Lord Jesus. And, it was just waking up one morning with this great thought in my mind that I would be a preacher. And in order to do that, of course, you have to know the God that you're preaching for.
Not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. This mystery is that through the...
How do you think that the world outside has changed since you've been here?
I have no idea. I really don't. And I don't give it much thought. This is my world. Prison.
Their world is small and protected. Their meals made, their schedules set, their days structured, their lives controlled. There were so many young faces. Walking through the cafeteria, I felt like I was back in high school. How do you feel when you see young kids in their late teens, early 20s coming in on life bits?
Oh, it cuts the guts out of you. Because they're going to have to finish their ride. I mean, they ate their quarter, but it's a real roller coaster, you know. When you sit for years and years and years, and I've got almost 20 years in segregation, boy, you do some really inside, you go inside a lot. And so I've learned quite well who I am as a person. I've had to keep from going insane. And I've been to the edge of insanity and looked over it and thought what it'd be like to jump in the spirit of my mind. I've just recently had visits, and so it was kind of shocker what went on, but I was with two other men, and they were skinned down, and they were talking with the guards about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm looking at them, because I came in last, and they're talking, and they're buck naked, and they're talking. And this is the first time that it happened to me when I got out of the shoe. And this is with this new policy where they're supposed to establish some level of trust and rapport with prison guards, and they're going to teach you these programs. And the guards started talking to me about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I said, listen, you're trying to bust me for something. You've got me standing in front of you naked, and you want social interaction? Give me my fucking pants. And I grabbed them, and I don't know how to wrap my mind around that. I mean, it's a very contrived, abnormal environment, isn't it? And long term, I don't know how they'd expect you to be normal. I'm definitely not the same person at all. I don't even know the person I was when I came in. I come from a fucked up environment. What are the chances that my values are not going to be fucked up?
When Jordan Gallant was 24 years old, he was sentenced to life 25 for murder. 6 years later, he was convicted of killing 3 prison guards in a riot. It was July 25, 1982, and Archambault Penitentiary experienced what some consider to be the worst riot in Canadian history. What began as an escape attempt escalated into a hostage-taking. The 2 inmates who initiated the riot killed themselves. 3 guards were brutally slaughtered and disfigured, one of them just hours away from his retirement.
I've been in riots. Archambault wasn't my first. I hope it's my last.
Jordan says he didn't participate in the murder of the guards at Archambault. However, he was charged with taking part in the killing of 2 of the guards and stabbing the 3rd to death single-handedly. The jury was surprised when, on the 2nd day of his trial, Jordan pled guilty to all 3 murders.
I don't entertain normal thoughts, which is probably why I'm not normal, you know?
What is normal?
I think normal is learning to be, at the worst, comfortable with conforming.
was told that inmates who conform to the structure of a prison like Matsqui are rewarded with a transfer to a lower security facility. I first met Todd Matchett when he was still at Matsqui. He told me then that he had not killed anyone. I believed his sentence unjust, and initially thought that he would be the main subject of this film. By the time I caught up with Todd, he had been moved to Ferndale. I've heard that there's been a lot of controversy out back in New Brunswick about you being moved.
To a minimum?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one yet, but it's possible. I didn't, I think that with me, just because of the fact that, not just because of the murder I was involved in, but because of the fact that my co-accused later escaped and went on to become known to be New Brunswick's first and most vicious serial killer.
Todd Matchett and Scott Curtis hooked up with Alan Legier to rob a local store. Later, Todd co-wrote a book about the crime in which he maintains he didn't kill anyone. But the fact is, he was part of a brutal crime where someone died. He seemed unwilling to take responsibility for that, and full of excuses.
When I was 5, my father had a pool hall. He bootlegged, he sold dope and everything like that, and stolen goods. And you know, even though you're 5 and 6 or whatever, you see all these people and you see all this money and everything going around. It's imprinted on you at a young age. I was in reform school 3 different times from the age of 12 to about 15. 6 months, a year and a half, or whatever. And that's like a little camp sort of thing, so you don't really get the realities of what prison could be like. And, you know, I always said I'd never end up in prison, and, you know, right up to 16, 17, 18 years old, I'll never end up in prison.
Despite his father's warnings not to get involved with Legier, Todd Matchett went ahead with the crime, as planned. Todd, Scott, and Legier broke into the home of the Glendenings. Mr. Glendenning fought back.
So I hit him over the head with a sawed-off shotgun, and that pretty much, it dropped him to the floor. And from that point on, we managed to tie them up. We tied them up, we find out where the safe is after an extensive amount of violence.
They fled with the safe and split the money between them. Todd and Scott took off for Toronto.
I think it was 2 days later when we were on the run, myself and my partner in St. John, we were on the run watching the news, and that's when we found out the first time that somebody had been killed at this robbery, and it died from the victim died from strangulation. Something was tied around his neck, right? And we never tied nothing around the guy's neck. We tied his hands and feet and stuff. So, you know, we figured out, you know, it was Legier, and there was another scarf of some sort tied around the victim's wife as well, but she lives, so I just sort of rolled over and tried to go to sleep and not think about it till the next day.
The 3 men were apprehended when the police received a tip from an anonymous caller. Legier pled innocent to the charges, while Todd and Scott pled guilty.
It was like a catch-22. You couldn't really testify against him because you would be more or less condemning yourself, knowing you're going to prison anyway. Why not go to prison and be accepted in the population and, you know, live your life as best you can in prison?
Through further research, I later discovered that Mrs. Glendenning stated that Todd was the one who assaulted her.
Sorry, I never did nothing. I was there.
He said her memory was wrong. By the end of these interviews, I had reached a crossroads. I had gone in to ask these men about youth violence and came out confused about what I was asking. I was becoming aware of my own responsibility to myself, to these men, their victims, their families, and to you. I was worried about getting it wrong. All of the men I'd interviewed had been transferred from Matsqui to other facilities. I thought I needed to go back. Maybe the answers I was seeking still lay in prison. My first stop was William Head, a medium security institution on Vancouver Island.
I've had a chance to look at things. They have, it's called a black cloth that represents
the person that's gone. And you speak to it, and then it's burned afterwards, and then for the next 3 full moons, you cook a meal and leave it in some quiet place for the person that's gone. And so I did that, and I mean, that was hard. I mean, I started to get choked up about that. I mean, the physically making the meal and, you know, making a meal for 2 people basically was what it was. And, you know, I mean, it was emotional, but I still pulled back from that. You know, I didn't take it as far as it could go. You know, I took away everybody's innocence that ever knew me and that ever knew the person that I killed. They're not Rick and Linda. They're the parents of the son that's the murderer. And I mean, that's been hard for them, and it will always be hard for them. You know, would I, the cliche, would I give my life to have hers back? You know, I don't know.
Ben Gill met us on the island when he came over to visit Meva.
I've noticed a lot of change in him. I just wish, though, that I could come out and see him a lot more than it's allowing, because the ferry ride, and you almost have to spend the night here on the island in order to come out here.
In our first interview, Meva told me that when his father hired him to kill his uncle, his aunt had also become his victim unintentionally. I needed some clarity.
Last time I talked to you, I asked you to tell me briefly about what got you into prison, and you did, and I'm going to ask you to just tell me in a little more detail from when your dad asked you through the crime.
At that time, I wasn't thinking of what was going to happen to my uncle or my aunt. I presume he knew that rifle was behind my back, and maybe he seen me coming up behind with holding something behind my back through a rear view mirror or side view mirror, and when he didn't come up, I raised the gun, and it was already loaded and everything, and I raised the gun and shot him in the head. When I raised the gun, he got up to, he went to get up to run away, I guess it was. And just as he was getting up, I shot him, and he stumbled to the back, and he fell into the back of the van. My aunt, she was screaming. So I went into the van to shoot him again, just to make sure that he was dead. And my aunt ran out the passenger side door. I caught up with her, and I shot her in the back, and she fell down. And I shot her twice more, so I shot her 4 times. And she continued to moan, and I have no more bullets left. It was a horrible sound. So there was no more bullets left, so I picked up a couple of fist-sized rocks, and she had a big hole in her chest cavity. So I stuck a couple of rocks in there in order to speed up the death so she would stop moaning.
You both of you still have a relationship with your father.
Yes.
I don't know how much of this story you've heard in this detail, and I'm sorry to...
I don't think he's heard any of it.
I was 7 when it happened, and I've had a lot of time to, I guess, almost get used to the idea, get thrown in this frame of mind that, okay, it's in our family, it's happened, but you know, it makes me really angry when I see how my brother is now.
The choices I made weren't the best of choices, and I tried to talk with my uncle, it didn't work, and I tried to talk with my father, it didn't work. And I don't want to blame him. The responsibility is me. I'm the one who pulled the trigger. I could have easily said, no, you go ahead and do it. But, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
After leaving William Head, I returned to Ferndale to meet with Todd Matchett.
You know, I've been in prison 14 years now, and to get out in the street, my first few passes, you know, I was in awe of everything I seen when I go to a mall and see all the stuff they got there, and, you know, so things like that. The simplest things sort of throw you for a loop. Come in when I was 18, so I grew up in prison. You know, I still feel extremely bad that I didn't really do enough that night to try to eliminate the death of John Glendenning. And, you know, I think about that a lot, so there's probably a lot more I could have done that night that I didn't really do. Whether I come up with excuses that, you know, Leisure would kill me, or, you know, it's probably not a good thing to try, and, you know, he's stronger or whatever. So, still, you know, still, it's something I'll never forget, you know, and that's a good thing, and but it's something I'll never be proud of, right? So.
Bayfield Sylvie had also been moved to Ferndale.
I was transferred here in June of 1999, and after being here 8 months, I have been granted personal development passes that allow me to go out into the community to NA groups, which is Narcotics Anonymous, a link group, which is long-term inmates now in the community, sharing their experiences, and in church services. And this is a beginning, and this is much better. We're actually in a house, and I have a room, and I happen to have a spectacular view of the mountains.
Now, some people would say, this is a life inmate. They shouldn't have views of mountains, and they shouldn't be able to go around. And so what would you say?
I would say that I understand that kind of judgment, because I kind of hold it myself to some degree. But the facts are, in Canada, they give us who commit murder, some of us, most of us, an opportunity to reintegrate. And this is a small step in that direction. And it's necessary. I would not want to go from Matsquit to the community cold. You know, it would be too much information for me, too much change.
Does long-term sentencing work?
That's a tough one. I don't know whether it works. I think that serving a long time can be a deterrent to reoffending and even to violating a condition, because there is that desire not to be experiencing the load of negativity that happens inside.
Whether it works or not, you don't know.
Well, I think it's going to work for me.
The next stop was Kent, a maximum security facility 2.5 hours outside of Vancouver. When I approached the front desk and told the guard who I was there to see, he asked me if I knew what Jordan Gallant had done. I said I was aware. "Not a model prisoner," he responded, then let me in.
They told me that I could get to William Head, which would actually extend my life. The quality of my life would improve in terms of the salt air, more oxygen, so on. If I took a program. Well, the fourth day of the program, a prison guard or a prison official who was running the program said to me that I'm supposed to role play, see if I can remember how it went, returning a broken toy to a department store. And I was supposed to be passive, assertive, and aggressive, I think. I tried to wrap my mind around that, given where it come from. And basically how I saw it, I was supposed to perform like a SEAL or in front of a bunch of guys I didn't know, didn't really want to know. At the behest or at the demand of a prison guard. Being conditioned and wired the way I am, old school, I couldn't do it. So I left the program knowing that it could cost me my life or make my life shorter.
Where are you?
You can't. Yeah, in the max again. It's more of a warehouse type thing. The man is out of your face more. I'd say if you're doing a definite sentence, a relatively small bit, this would be the place to bang it out. Because the man, by and large, just leaves you alone. I suppose if I really thought I had a shot at the street, that I might play the game, but I've always seen it as crawling. You know, I mean, the man who I really am would not do that. So if I did that in order to get out, would the man that got out be me? And I've never been put in a position where I have to resolve that conflict because I'm not getting out. So it's just, I wonder if it's been a cop-out, you know?
There was only one last stop. Kevin Bainbridge.
So here I am, a asbestos removal demolition crew expert, and loving it. I think for the first week that when I first arrived here, I didn't step out. I was really, really terrified. But a couple of the lifers pulled me out and said, okay, we'll take you down here, take you down there. I am in a halfway house in Surrey, BC. Beautiful little place. I made day parole 6 months ago. I've been doing pretty good.
What's the biggest thing, the scariest thing being out?
Dealing with the public. I was walking down the road in the evening. In fact, it was dark, and there was 3 or 4 kids coming up the walkway or up the road, and I overheard them saying, hey, he's got a leather jacket. Now, the first thing that came into my mind was, there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 of them. I don't stand a chance in hell. Sure, I'll take down 1 or 2, but they're going to put me down, they're going to put the boots to me. I'm toast. So I figured, well, there was about maybe 5 or 6 feet in between us, and then I just stepped up the pace real quick, and I started yelling and screaming. The first motherfucker that wants to take the jacket, I'll kill him. I said, I'm no stranger to the penitentiary system. In fact, that's where all my friends are. You want to fucking die? And they just cleared a path for me. So it was, how are you supposed to handle a situation like that, especially if you're older? You're fucked, bottom line. It's good to be out, but my family is back in prison. I miss quite a few of the guys, and I think the learning process on maintaining to stay out is going to take for the rest of my life. Each time you come across a roadblock, you're not sure about how to handle it. If you were back in prison, you know exactly how to handle it and what to do. Out here, it's a brand new ball game. So.
And there they were. Some of them seemed to have grown, to have taken more responsibility, and some hadn't. I was naive when I started this. I believed what I was told. I wanted to trust. At 27, I've given 5 years to this project. I don't know if there are any simple answers. I couldn't find any. I only found more questions. But I need to walk away from this. I need to release myself from trying to figure it out.